At least 45 people have been killed and more than 100 others injured from a stampede at a religious bonfire festival in Israel.
The chaotic scenes were captured on social media, showing thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews trying to escape the crush.
The Lag BaOmer festival celebrates the life of a 2nd century rabbi, and it is one of the holiest festivals in the Jewish calendar. Last year's events were curtailed because of COVID. This year, 10,000 pilgrims were allowed to attend, but more than 100,000 turned up. It was the largest legal public gathering in Israel since the pandemic, and it ended in tragedy. We don't know exactly what caused the stampede, but thousands were crushed into narrow passageways, and it quickly became chaotic. Some of the men tried to pull down corrugated walls to escape. They've been put up to keep people apart because of COVID. Children, some of them only 2 or 3 years old, became separated from their parents. Some were trampled on and died despite paramedics' attempts to resuscitate them.
We were standing and waiting for our friends. We were going to go inside for the dancing and stuff. And all of a sudden we saw paramedics from Madda and whatever running by, like mid-CPR on kids. And then one after the other started coming out, ambulances. Then we understood like something's going on here.
Mobile phone reception went down as people frantically tried to find loved ones. And the Israeli military sent helicopters to evacuate the worst injured. A call for blood donations has gone out across Israel today.
When we reached the place, we realised it is a totally different incident. We are in a mass casualty incident. I see here tens of people lying on the floor. I see here tens of injured walking and bleeding.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu resisted calls to put COVID restrictions on this year's festival. He visited the site in person on Friday morning. This is the worst civilian disaster in modern Israeli history. Condolences have been sent from world governments. There are some Jewish pilgrims who want to continue the festival today, but so far the police are preventing them from doing so.
Middle East correspondent from I24 News, Emily Rose, has more from the scene.
What is ordinarily a celebratory event turned tragic last night in the narrow makeshift walkway where I'm standing. It's a scene that Israeli officials are now calling the worst and most tragic incident in Israeli peacetime history, with at least 45 lives claimed in the stampede and at least 150 others being treated for their injuries. Women are not allowed past this point, so I'm just going to show you here what ensued last night in the later hours when worshippers came who had just come from a celebration above the hill where I'm standing, Mount Meron, at the tomb of a famous rabbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But as they were leaving, they slipped down this narrow walkway, crashed into each other, and caused this tragic stampede. Now the Israeli Prime Minister is calling for Sunday to be a national day of mourning for Israelis, and the Israeli president has opened up a hotline for families who are trying to locate their relatives. Even today, as we were walking around speaking to survivors from last night's event, they said they couldn't even locate relatives who they were still trying to find and knew were here last night. Now, emergency services have to go through the arduous task of identifying the bodies, and all of them have been relocated to a forensic site in Tel Aviv, but they aren't yet being released. And families are flocking there to try to identify their family members, with the first names being released and first families being notified. All of that under the fact that the ritual of the Sabbath is starting to ensue now, and ritually for Jewish people, traditionally, bodies need to be buried the earliest they possibly can be before the Sabbath and even after the Sabbath if the Sabbath interferes. So now these medical teams are against the clock. They're trying to notify families and identify bodies, all that as well, while trying to treat those who have been wounded. And the pandemonium could continue for days and even for weeks beyond this tragedy. As the dust starts to settle, the pandemonium continues to ensue. I'm Emily Rose, reporting from Mount Meron in Israel.